Welcome to the FMCG, guys. I'm your co-host, Daniel Torres, joined by Efrain Rosario. Hi, Efrain. How are you?
Good. How are you, Daniel?
Very good. I don't know if you remember what happened in March 2020, apart from me starting Dwyer Partners.
No. Whatever could that have been? I don't know.
So obviously, in case somebody's forgetting about it, which I doubt, COVID hit. Apart from having a great impact on our lives, which made some of us stay at home for a few weeks, it obviously changed a lot of consumer habits. And from that point on, basically retail has changed a lot, and e-commerce is something you can not ignore anymore, for sure, for brands and obviously for retailers. However, now we're reaching a point of a certain stabilization. Some people are saying e-commerce is disappearing. Obviously, it's not. But Efrain, from your point of view, what's next for grocery e-commerce?
Well, I mean, for me, I think, a lot of people, and I think I'm going to borrow from Jeff Bezos on this, like to say about, what's changed. And I think sometimes we should look at, what's actually stayed the same. And one thing that has stayed the same has been the importance of trusted quality data. And, in essence, that's the fuel that makes the engine go when you think about digital transformation and just kind of at this point, business in general. So to me, I think it's really interesting for us to think about, what hasn't changed and what was important before COVID, during COVID, and especially now, post-COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very interesting to hear from the experts how they see the current scenario for European retail, global retail as well, but European especially, and what it means for FMCG brands. So for that matter, we have a very special guest today. His name is Yacine Terki. He is actually the co-founder and current CEO of DataImpact, which is a company whose data platform monitors data across 60 billion data points, tracking more than 50,000 online stores globally. And that was acquired by NielsenIQ in 2021. So now they go by DataImpact, by NielsenIQ.
Hello, I'm Yacine. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DataImpact, and I'm happy to be with you today.
Yacine, thanks for joining us today. Can you tell us and our audience a little bit about, in essence, what brought you to start DataImpact?
Very good question. So I was a long time ago. I was working in consulting, and I was helping a lot of CPGs to set up and challenge their strategy. And we noticed at that time that the omnichannel, the e-commerce was something very important. All the C-levels were speaking about that. But in terms of data, in terms of tool, they had nothing. So we started looking to that, and we realized that the CPG was the e-commerce and omnichannel on the CPG was at the beginning, but it was starting to grow. And we said, okay, if this trend is real, what will happen is that the shopper will change their behaviors. As the retailer will be selling online, we will have access to tremendous amounts of data. And our ambition was to say, okay, we are going to collect this data and to build the right analytics, omnichannel analytics for these CPGs so that they can take the right decisions and actions.
And like, what was the context then, and how has it changed now, actually?
Very good question. So at that time, the penetration of the e-commerce was obviously lower, of course, depending on the countries. So you had at that time some advanced manufacturers that were already investing and trying to develop their capabilities around the e-commerce, while for other ones it was not important, and was a lot of education to explain why it was important. One other important topic was the model, the e-commerce model. 10 years ago, in most of the countries, the e-commerce model was, let's say, warehouse-based e-model, like Amazon or Ocado or this kind of players. And in few countries, the model was store-based model. And it was the case in France, where we have been incepted, where all the stores were like micro warehouses. So at that time, we had, for example, for Leclerc, 400 or 500 stores, and all the stores were like micro warehouses. And what we have seen since then is that this model is progressing a lot, and in all the countries, in Germany, in the UK, but also in the US, in Australia, this store-based model has increased and has boomed. And today we have a mix of warehouse-based model and store-based model, and this is increasing the level of complexity. On top of that, of course, we have seen the rise of new models, new retailers like Instacart, like quick commerce, but also we have seen a shift in the models of the retailers where, for example, the e-retail media is becoming more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Retail media. Nobody's heard about that word in the last year, have they? And how was it for you, Yacine, as a co-founder of DataImpact? Like, how was the journey of like starting the company until I know that you were acquired by NielsenIQ? How was that? Tell us a bit about that story behind the DataImpact.
So as each startup, I think very often when you start a company, you have something in mind, and then you discover the reality. So when we started, the truth is that we didn't know how much it will be complex, technically speaking. So we faced a lot of challenges, in terms of data collection, in terms of data maintenance. You know, UPC was something like, we thought that it was something basic. Giving the right UPC to the right product and the right category to each product is dramatically complex.
What is UPC?
Sorry, it's the EIN, the EIN code. EIN code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like the specific SKU.
Yeah, exactly.
As a code.
And when you are a consumer, for you it's something basic and easy. But being able to clean properly the data, to have robust data, is very, very complex. So obviously we thought that it will be easier. I think one important thing that is in our DNA at DataImpact is that we have been working with the business. When we started, we were working with some clients, and we were really working with the people that were using the tool. So we were selling the tool, and we were developing the tool with the final user, not the C-levels, because the C-levels, for them, it's very important to have the high-level visibility, but this kind of dashboard are not enough to take any action or for the day-to-day of their teams. So we have been working very, very closely with the users. So we started in France, then we started working in Europe and US, and now we are working globally in all the regions. We have offices in all the regions, and we cover all the regions with our clients. Regarding your question on NielsenIQ was very interesting because when we created the company with Ludo, who is the other co-founder, one of the first point was to say, okay, we are a startup, we will grow quickly. So at some points we have two options, either the IPO or the acquisition. But we knew at that time that at some points the manufacturers will move from the monitoring or their KPIs like images, titles, to something much more advanced, where, for example, you check your availability in thousands and thousands of stores, where you use your prices for your revenue management, but more than that, where you cross-reference your sales performance with all these business levers. Because at some points, improving the quality of your images is fine, but your manager will ask, okay, what is the return on investment? Mm-hmm. And to do that, we knew that we'll have to get access to the sales data. And NielsenIQ is the #1 provider in terms of sales data and e-commerce sales data. So on our side, we had them. It was one of our objectives since day one. On their side, it was not exactly the same story, because of course they wanted to continue to improve their capabilities on the omnichannel, and they have scanned all the market, analyzing the ability to collect the data at store level, the ability to clean the data and maintain the data automatically, and the ability to add a layer of AI on the basic data visualization to create more insights. And after scanning the different players, they contacted us, and they wanted to move forward with us, and we were really aligned with the strategy of NielsenIQ at very, very high level. So I'm speaking about the CEO, the CRO, the head of sales. We share the same vision with the head of product also, and that's why I think we are going the right direction, and I continue to invest heavily in DataImpact so that we can develop this new generation of omnichannel analytics.
That's great. You know, and I'm guessing some point in that journey from fledgling startup to, like you said, being part of the NielsenIQ family, a little something called COVID happened as well. I'm curious to hear, not just from the perspective in regards to, like, you know, the company trajectory, but actually in terms of like retail overall. What was the impact of COVID as you observed it through an omni-channel analytics lens?
I would say that first of all, what happened during the COVID is a reality. So we thought that it will be just during the COVID, and then we will lose everything just after. The truth is that we have seen an increase, and of course it's decreasing a bit depending on the categories and things like that. The e-commerce generally is decreasing, but I think that on the CPG, what happened is sticky. So the shoppers are becoming more and more omnichannel, and the COVID was a kind of catalyzer.
Mm-hmm.
With this change, as the shopper was changing, the manufacturers and the retailers have been obliged to move. So I would say that the major change on the retailer side is that they have been obliged to rethink their supply chain model. A lot of them, they were leveraging warehouses, as mentioned, and during the COVID, they realized that if you want for growth reason, but also for profitability reason, it was very important to leverage their network of stores, and it's what they have done. If you take Walmart, for example, it's amazing what they have done. They had, for example, on Walmart in the US, on their click and collect, they had less than 2,000 stores in online before the COVID, and now they have nearly 5,000 stores. So the acceleration was incredible, and their execution was perfect, to be honest, and they took a lot of market shares during this period. So I think that for the retailers, the omnichannel became a reality, and they started considering how they can leverage their stores to deliver the e-commerce, their e-commerce clients. And even in markets like the UK that are really delivery and not click and collect, most of the baskets are prepared in stores, not in central warehouses. And again, this is logical for many reasons. When you sell a TV, you can do everything in the warehouse. When you sell a basket of 20 or 30 pounds, leveraging the store could be a good opportunity.
That's interesting, because we always talk about the growth of e-commerce and how grocery e-commerce is growing a lot, which is obvious, but it's interesting to hear the consequences that has at an operational level, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it will continue to change in the next year. We can see a lot of new channels, a lot of things happening. We are in a very exciting, I think for the industry, this period is very, very, very exciting, because we are all the retailers are in a test and learn phase on everything. On the retail media, we know that it's important, but we don't know exactly how. On the quick commerce, some of them decided to develop their own solution for quick commerce, but other ones are partnering. For many topics, it's changing very, very quickly, and I think what we are seeing in let's say 5 years didn't happen in the 30 or 40 last years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a typical thing that they've said. Well, it's like an exponential curve first of all, but then it's like COVID really accelerated in 3 months what would have happened in 3 or maybe more years, right? 3 years is probably a conservative estimate. And how would you define the current situation for retailers?
I think that all the cards are reshuffled. It's a very, very exciting situation. They have some challenges. First of all, I mentioned the profitability. So they are investing heavily on the e-commerce. They are investing heavily on their supply chain and their models. They are investing on the technology. And on this is on the one hand, but on the other hand, we know there is a lot of pressure on the prices for the manufacturers, but also for the retailers. And in this context, the profitability is something key. Of course, we discussed also the e-retail media. It's it's must-win war for the retailers. Now the question is how they do it, and I think we are still at the beginning. If you look at European or global level, only few retailers, in my opinion, are really moving fast and have been able to step up on this. Now we can see a lot of other things. For example, the Amazon model. On the operating model of Amazon, not the warehouse-based, but the self-service on your content and things like that. A lot of manufacturers are also developing this solution and so either on the operating model, but also on the 3Ps. When we look at all the retailers, for example, in the US, more and more are offering the opportunity to third parties to sell on their website, and this is already a game changer. So it's still small on some categories, but it's growing, and it will dramatically change the industry. So the model, the retailers, they are completely shifting, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I imagine that I guess one of the benefits of, like you said, having scaled globally, both as a standalone as DataImpact, but also now as part of the NielsenIQ family, you are able to see some of those trends that maybe are a bit more developed in certain regions or certain parts of the world, and like you said, are still fairly nascent here in Europe. Like retail media, for sure, comes to mind when I think about that.
Yeah, definitely a lot of specificities from one country to the other. If you take Asia, if you take China, we can learn also a lot. It's a different commerce. It doesn't mean that we will see the same in Europe or in the US in the next years, but it's very, very important. So I think that I don't think we will have one model for all regions. I think all the regions have their specificities. The retailers don't have the same networks. The shoppers don't behave the same way. The cost of the labor and the cost of the delivery is not the same. So this will have different impacts. What we see globally is that the e-commerce is becoming very important, and now nearly in all the countries, even small countries, we have reached a threshold where it's becoming strategic for the manufacturers to take actions and to look at their e-commerce and omnichannel very, very quickly. I think this is what we see in as I mentioned in all the regions, but we have a lot of specificities from one region and sometimes from one country to the other.
Mm-hmm. So I think that you've already kind of, in essence, in some of your other responses, talked about some of the challenges that retailers are facing and how, like you said, they're evolving. What about from the brand or the manufacturer side? Are you seeing any particular challenges in talking to some of your clients that the brands / manufacturers are facing, particularly with regards to e-commerce?
Yeah, I would say so if I look at if I look at it with an analytics angle, the first thing is the trust in the data. So what we see today is that a lot of manufacturers have been blurred because they get access to some data in the past through the digital shelf that they don't trust. Why? Because either the data collection was not clean or the maintenance, and they don't trust. So they lost the trust of their teams. And this is a big problem, because when you are a manager, top manager in a company, and you want to engage your team and make things change, if the first level on the data, they don't trust it, you cannot monitor and you cannot take any action. So I think that the first thing is to rebuild this trust. On top of that, what I was mentioning is that what we have seen, for example, in all the last RFPs where we participated, is that they want also to analyze their performance. So today, they don't want to see on the one hand what we call the causal data, images, out of stock, and on the other hand, the performance data. They want to cross-reference this data to be able to say, okay, I have a decrease on my sales on this retailer. It's coming from this category, it's coming from these stores, and the reason is out of stock. And this is key. And they are shifting from something where they were just monitoring to something more performance and ROI orient. So this is a big challenge. The second challenge, I would say, is around globally the ecosystem. Why? Because it's big now, e-commerce. Like, it's not few percent of the business of our client. It's a big part of their business, but more than that, depending on the countries, but it's up to 70% to their shoppers. So you cannot accept to lose online. Even if it's 10% of your business, if it's 60% of your client, you need to be perfect in your execution. And to do that, our vision is that you need different solutions. A solution that would provide your digital shelf, your location-based analytics, your PIM, agencies that will take care of your content, e-retail media specialists. And to do this, you need to have an open ecosystem. We don't think that one player can cover everything. And we know that we have seen it in the past. When you try to do everything, generally you are very weak on all the value chain. So I think that the different players should be specialized either on the data or on the PIM or the consulting, and we need to build bridges. We think that the future is this ecosystem, and one constraint for this ecosystem to work is, again, the quality of the data. Because if you cannot have this flow between marketing automation tool, digital shelf, a PIM, if it's not automated, it cannot work. If it's not automated and if it's not trusted. I think this is another one. And just to finish on this, I think that a new challenge, so it's still new, but if you look at, for example, the social commerce, more and more, so it's still small on some categories, but what we have seen with TikTok, for example, the move of TikTok, we'll see if it works or no. But I know that our clients are looking to this because it's potentially the future. So the quick commerce, the social media are new challenges that they have. And to be honest, for the moment, I don't think they found the perfect solution, because it's another channel on top of what they have already to do. But it is something that they have in mind, and it will potentially be a challenge. They need to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you have like things like live shopping events, right? So we've just started our own FMCG guys TikTok channel. I was looking through it. And one of the big FMCG companies, they were having a live event of live shopping, but in Indonesia. So it was a completely different market, right? Which in Europe is unexpected for, I think it was a beauty or personal care company, right? So if you had to summarize it, Yacine, you've pointed out a lot of like topics that will come through. I call it like sophistication of e-commerce, right? Because before it was just about being there, and now it's about being there, but with some sophistication, some category management behind.
Exactly. And I would say today, the e-commerce team cannot handle all the challenges of the e-commerce. We need to break the silos and collaborate, because some topics are sitting with supply chain, some are sitting with marketing, some are sitting with category management, as you mentioned. And for me, we have only one very, very important thing is data. If you don't have the data, if you don't trust your data, you cannot have the visibility on your business, you cannot know which actions you can take, and you cannot connect your ecosystem. And I think it's the biggest channel is how we leverage the right data and technological assets to see what's happening, to take the right decisions, and to automate and take the right actions as much as possible.
So to that point, Yacine, I think it's clear that you value and you share the value of trusted quality data with your clients. Can you give us an example of where a client has been able to, in essence, have that data set that's trusted and is of a high enough quality to be able to, in essence, be able to really win on the digital shelf, like where they've been able to kind of look across that full scope of data to drive some sort of success?
Yeah. So I think so on the data, the quality of the data is important for two things. The first one is the accuracy. So let's take Tesco, for example. Let's take the search KPI on Tesco, okay? If you take 2 online stores of Tesco and you simulate one keyword, beer, shampoo, ice cream, you will see that the results are different. It means that if you select only one store to do all your analysis, what you will see is wrong. Same on the out of stock. Asda, you have 600 stores, I think, something like that. If you monitor 1 or 5 stores, your accuracy will be around 20%.
Wow.
The only way to know what is happening is to monitor all the online stores. So the first thing, so it's not more complex. At the end of the day, you will end with one number. If you do it on one store, you will have 5% out of stock, but it will be wrong because it's only one store. And if you do it on 600 stores, you will have still one number, but it will be potentially 12%. And these 12% will be accurate. Then the second level is the actionability. So on the actionability side, what is important is the granularity. So at some point, you can imagine that when you are in front of a retailer, and to answer your question, we have many examples, but this is one example. One of our clients being able to analyze his out of stock, then being able to look at the competition to see if it's a problem on his product, or on the category, and then being able to zoom on product and stores where he has issues. And it was the key account manager discussing this with the retailer, saying, okay, look, in this region, we have very high out of stock. We should increase the average orders by X so that we remove out of stock. It's easy, and it's valued by the manufacturers, but also by the retailer. Because when you're losing a sales for out of stock reasons, the retailer is losing, the shopper is losing, and you, as a manufacturer, you are also losing. And what our clients told us is that thanks to this data, they are able to initiate discussions with the retailers because they trust this data. No one will go in front of Tesco saying, okay, I have an issue on my search or my out of stock, and saying, yes, we have a sample of 1 or 5 stores. No one will do that. You have the relationship with the retailer is very important. You are not going to put it at risk based on something where you know it's probably wrong. So you can initiate this, and we had also feedback from the retailer saying this is interesting for us, because when you share with us like very macro information, not actionable, I cannot do anything. Coming to me, telling me the craft beer category is growing is fine, but I already know it. Tell me things that I don't know. Tell me that compared to my competitors, I have higher out of stock in the southeast of the UK. Tell me this. And that's how, and I have many cases, but again, it's collaborative with the retailer, but you cannot initiate this collaboration if you don't have data that you trust.
Yeah, because if not, you're relying on your customers' data effectively, no? And you can't necessarily pull the levers that you want to pull.
Exactly, and some information. So it depends, of course, on the clients and on the retailers. But even for some of them, even them today, because they have like old systems and they don't have the good technology, even for them, from the retailers, it's complex for them to know which product was, I don't know, out of stock in which store, even for them. And I will give you one example with, it's not in Europe, it's in the US, with one of our clients. We were working on an analysis and they shared with us their products, so their blockbusters, the list of their assortment. And we have seen that 2 of their products, they were supposed to be in 98% of the stores of this retailer. When we made our analysis online, they were in 0%.
Wow.
Why? A technical blip, because on this retailer, when you have the product in your store, to see the product online, you need to fill one information. This information is the localization of the product in the store. And if you don't do it, you will not, it will not appear. Why? Because the pickers, they cannot go to pick the product and to fill the basket. During 25 weeks, it was 2 blockbusters. During 25 weeks at these retailers, our client didn't know that the product was not online. The retailer didn't know that the product was not online. Only on 2 products, it was a missed win of more than 3 million. Only 2 products. So this is an example of how you can leverage all this data to really see what is happening and help also the manufacturer. We think the retailer, so because sometimes we think that they know everything. No, even them, they don't see everything. And giving this kind of insights is very helpful. And this one, for example, it was a quick win because they had to click on 3 buttons and it was okay.
Wow. Well, because that's the thing, right? Like you can't expect the retailer is looking at growth, but probably more at category growth. They're not going to be looking specifically at your brand and monitoring it unless it's something super strategic for them.
Yes, and I think with the online, we kind of took bad habits. Why? In the offline world, today you have, depending on the countries, of course, but you have people visiting stores. You have a lot of data, accurate data coming from retailers. So for you, it's normal when you have one product missing in a real brick and mortar in store to go to the store, to visit, to list your product and things like that. And on the online, we think that it will be natural. Your product will be in 100% of the stores, no problems on the execution, no problems on the visibility, and it's wrong. It's not the right assumption. So yes, you have gaps, and these gaps, so it can be. It's not. I'm not speaking about 1 to 2%. If you add the different gaps at the end, if you sum the different gaps, it's potentially like 20% gaps. So you can imagine you're potentially losing 20% of your revenue because you have these blips in your execution.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing. I think that, for example, category management, trade marketing, but especially category management, which is effectively looking at the shelf and what works and what not, it's taken ages to appear as a specialization for e-commerce, right? So
yeah, definitely. The question that I'm asked very often is, do you think we should have the same assortment online, offline, things like that? I don't have the answer. I would say it depends on the category. What I can say is that the category management is very important on the e-commerce. Because, of course, on some retailers, you don't have the same assortment. So you need to be very precise on what you want to put. If we take Amazon, for example, you need to be, or a lot of pet food specialists. It's very important to define very precisely your assortment on these retailers. But on top of that, what is, I think, really important and why we need the category management involved, it's because also we see a lot of things before the offline world. Because if a new product is distributed online, in one day you will know exactly what your competitors have launched, where, if it's in one store or 5,000 stores and things like that. And for example, in the US, I think that in the US, very often when we speak with our clients, they involve the category management. In Europe, it's less the case, but in the US, they involve the category management. For them, it's very, very important.
Yeah. I think that the US has reached the level of sophistication that Europe has not reached yet.
Yeah. So who do you typically interact with then, for your European clients? Who in the organization do you typically tend to interact with?
It really depends on the organization. So our first contact generally is the e-commerce team, so digital or e-commerce globally. Then we have the commercial team, so it depends on the countries, but in some countries it's either the key account managers. So generally we work a lot with the key account managers because we help them in their negotiation. So for example, on the pricing, on the assortment, we can do analysis and help them table some discussions with the retailers. But we work also with the field sales force. So in some countries, if I take France, for example, the field sales force, they are leveraging all our data to take action because very quickly they can know that in one store, one product is missing. So they can take some action. So I would say yes, in Europe, it's more around e-commerce and commercial team, and then supply chain. So digital e-commerce, commercial, and supply chain, less with the category management.
Mm-hmm. But clearly there's this trend that I spoke about once with someone we had on the show. It's really the democratization of e-commerce is happening now, that more and more departments are seeing having an impact and having to get involved. Yacine, this was super interesting. Have one last question for you, which our listeners will have heard before because we asked it to all our guests, which is if you had to go back to the beginning of your career before you started DataImpact, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to yourself at that stage?
I would say test and learn. Very often we spend too much time trying to find a solution to a problem, trying to find the perfect solution. We can work during months, years, and at the end of the day, we realize that it was not the problem that we have identified was not the good one, and potentially our solution is overkill or it's too late because someone was faster than us. So I would say yes. Test and learn. When you want to launch something, when you have an idea, your job, if you want to change your methodology, if you want to innovate, start small, test it, put it very quickly in front of the users, and get feedback, and then evolve. Don't try to do something perfect from the beginning because it's impossible. You don't have all the parameters. You don't have all the knowledge. So test, learn, and if you have to fail, fail quickly.
This was Yacine Terki, co-founder and current CEO of DataImpact, or as it's known now, DataImpact by NielsenIQ. Efrain, what are your key takeaways after this conversation?
It's fascinating to hear one about Yacine's and DataImpact's journey, going from a fledgling startup to now, like as he's mentioned, part of the NielsenIQ family. But in terms of like some of the key takeaways that he had, in terms of his observations of the retail industry and specifically e-com, I find it fascinating to hear him talk about how they've kind of in essence built their product, which is by users and for end users. So the fact that is the dashboards that are at the core of the DataImpact solution are very action-oriented dashboards that are, can certainly be shared with senior leaders, but are also in essence for the practitioners in e-com as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that also the uniqueness of their product in the way that it tracks a big sample of online stores. They sample, I think, 50,000 stores globally, versus having a small sample just makes a huge difference on how the assessment you can make, right?
Well, and I think, he brought that to life really well in the example he shared about, a brand assuming that their product was I think 98% listed on their retail partners website, where it was, in fact, it was actually zero. And that oversight resulted in a €3 million loss over 25 weeks. And but even more fascinating to me on that is that they were able to correct it in 3 clicks. That is just, speed at its essence.
No, and interesting as well. I mean, I think it's just about like the sophistication of like e-commerce, right? Or digital grocery commerce, if you like. The fact that now post-COVID, it's not about just being there, but it's about being there, but really studying the way you're there. Like the fact that now obviously category managers are getting involved, but also field force, right? And the fact that, we didn't talk about it that much, but then you have like the whole retail media space in which they're doing a lot of work in and tracking that part as well, which they actively track. That will make or break your business online, really, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's all built on a foundation of trusted quality data, right? So if you don't have that, then in essence, it can't work. It doesn't work actually unless you have that as the foundation. So I think, being able to not just build high quality structured data, but to use that as a basis for trust building between brand and retail partners is really, really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Efrain, again for the episode. Thanks to Yacine as well for daring to come on the show. And thanks to all our audience for daring to listen to us again. We really enjoy doing these shows and we really enjoy your company. So if you want to show us support, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to this podcast. And actually one thing that would be great, which we don't have many of yet, is if you could rate and comment our podcast as well. And remember, you can also listen to our sister podcast in the other side of the Atlantic, the CPG guys, who, by the way, we want to congratulate for hitting 20,000 followers on LinkedIn this week, which is quite an impressive milestone. So thanks for listening again, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG guys.